On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what if the Thunder leap into the top four? What decisions would they have to make in the NBA draft? Should the Thunder trade back from 12? And who should be on the Thunder's radar in terms of prospects?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Styles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, lothunderpod@gmail.com. On today's show, we are joined by Richard Stayman at Mavs Draft on Twitter, host of Locked On NBA Big Board, to discuss the NBA draft. Everything from the Thunder possibly leaping up next week in the lottery to the top four, trading back from 12, trading up from 12, and what other things they could do around that range. Richard, thanks for taking the time. I know you're very busy during this draft season, especially with the combine next week.
Yeah, hey, no problem. Always good to be Thunder draft for a minute.
Thunder draft, Richard Stayman. It was a lot of fun all last year and the year prior. We're doing it again this year, talking weekly with our good pal at Mavs Draft on Twitter. Give him a follow over there for scoops about who's working out with who, and also just some great breakdowns of these prospects as well. Richard, technically speaking, the Thunder could go to the top four next week on Tuesday. It's only an 8% chance of happening, but it could happen. At number one, they obviously take Victor. And if that were to happen, what would be the outlook in Oklahoma City for you?
Man, well, selfishly, I would be sad because that means Dallas loses the pick and the Orlando Magic, who I'm wearing a shirt of, get screwed. So hopefully not, with all due respect. But I think, with Wembanyama, it's a really interesting outlook. You probably have the two best rookies in the NBA of Victor Wembanyama and Chet Holmgren. So that dynamic would be very interesting to balance. I think it's a good thing the Thunder don't have to choose to balance that, because how do you make that work? How do you balance them off? They play similarly. Took me 4 tries, but for me, it's just that Chet is more of a rim protector, wants to be that center, I should say, wants to be that role more than Wembanyama, where Wembanyama can play anywhere on defense, anywhere on offense. And I think he's more of a true creator. I'd be interested to see that dynamic. I don't think you can really play them much at the same time.
So with that being said, are you telling me that if the Thunder got the first overall pick, they should consider trading it and having
No.
having it? Okay. So then we're not going that far. So I think it'd work out pretty well. I think that ultimately you would just have this lineup where, of course, there would be some growing pains, but a SGA, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, Chet, Victor down low, whoever you want to put the 4 and the 5. Obviously, Chet for the Thunder is viewed as a center and has always been viewed as a center for OKC. So he'd be the 5 and Victor the 4. And there'd be some growing pains in there, but ultimately, that's 5 extremely talented players. And typically, they figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, talent works. And again, that's up to coaching. And I mean, Oklahoma City's always had a strong history of coaching, I feel like, at least under this regime. And, for me, I think they'd make it work, right? Where you could stagger them. You could probably run them a few minutes together. It's hard to score on that much length. Like that's really the ultimate thing. Like you can't overthink it and say, well, Wembanyama does this, Chet does this, like I started to do. Really, at the end of the day, you have 16 feet of wingspan right there, and one just about between two guys. Like, how are you scoring on that if either of them are near the rim? And you can't take both out of the play on defense. And then you talk about offense. I mean, Chet can obviously spot up. So can Wembanyama. I think Wembanyama is a much better creator than Chet, which says a lot about Wembanyama more than it does about Chet. I think it's hard to that would be an insane dynamic, and also unfair to the league.
So we've talked about this before, but just real quick, let's say that card turns over at 2 on Tuesday, and the Thunder have the second overall pick because every day is Tuesday. And with that decision, if I put you in the chair, would it be a slam dunk Scoot Henderson for you?
I think so. They're one of the very few teams that there's a real strong case to start considering Brandon Miller. I think Brandon Miller he's more of a fit. I have a hard time saying that he's a better talent than Scoot Henderson, though. Like what Scoot does as a point guard, just being that bulldoze downhill 3-level scoring point guard with defense, I think it's more valuable than anything Brandon Miller can be. If both hit their ceiling, Scoot wins. I mean, and with that, if you had the two best guards in the NBA, the best backcourt in the NBA with Scoot and SGA, I mean, the ceiling's so much higher than with Giddey. I think it's tough, but someone's got to go.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting conundrum that they'd find themselves in at 2. Moving on to 3, is 3 just in a simple, you take Brandon Miller and you move on about your day, or do you maybe reach for a Jerice Walker?
No, don't reach at 3. Don't reach at 3 because Brandon Miller, I know what I just said. Like the ceiling isn't like superstar, but my God, it his floor high. Like we said the same thing about Jabari Smith, but I think it's a little bit different than it was for Jabari because he had a lot of tendencies, I think, and just limitations physically. Brandon Miller does not have. He's a 6'9" true small forward, and the skill set of 3-and-D plus creation, like not 3-and-D, but 3-point shooting, defense, creation, and just intelligence. That is just an unreal combo given his size.
And then if they go to 4, now here's where I think that there's a big conversation to be had. At 4, the options would be a guy like Amen Thompson, who you and I both have highly up there. Jerice Walker, who I think fits perfectly with what Oklahoma City wants to do. And then trading back is another option as well. With all that being said, what would be the play in your mind for where the Thunder are currently at?
Yeah, I don't like reaching for need. I think if you can get the same guy at 6 as you could at 4, why not get more capital? And obviously, Oklahoma City's not exactly hurting for draft capital right now, but I feel like you never can have enough assets, right? So I think if it were me and I was Sam Presti and I got the 4th pick, I'm calling everybody to just drive that price up as much as possible. I mean, you don't even need to move far back. I mean, 5 or 6, I think, does it. Then you take Taylor Hendricks or Jerice Walker. I don't think you take Amen Thompson. Although, let's just talk about it. If there's any spot where Amen Thompson hits his absolute upside, is there any other spot that comes to mind more easily than Oklahoma City? Like, disregard the talent situation around him and what's in place. Just the development that Oklahoma City does. Like, is that not the perfect spot for him to develop in?
Yeah, I mean, the culture fit, the ability to develop talent in Oklahoma City, and the coaching staff, I think, all kind of build around what he is. And so I think that'd be a wonderful landing spot for Thompson.
Yeah, and again, just ignoring context. Like, this isn't like, hey, they should take him. Like, I don't think they should. But, like, just in theory, like, just putting him with a team that has a track record of developing players like him, why not?
And then you get to the conversation at 4. I think that I would agree of, like, you trade back, but it's a simple trade. It's not as though you went from 4 to out of the first round. It's just a simple, hey, in order for the Thunder to get to the top 4, there is at least one, if not multiple teams who've really slid down and are really dejected coming off of lottery night and need to acquire something. And so to say, hey, for us, Walker would be a massive success. For you guys, it would not feel that way after losing, only winning 20 games or whatever you won and got pushed down. How about you give us Walker? We'll give you Amen Thompson. You can sell it to your fan base, and we get an additional first-round pick or an additional first and 2 seconds or whatever. It's something small, but is at least worthwhile whenever you can get a better option for both sides. And draft capital becomes even more important as you move forward in this new CBA. So even though the Thunder have a lot of draft capital, you can never have too much, as that's an easy way to get cost-controlled talent once you start having to pay the core on this roster. So I think it's going to be vital to continue to have that draft pick war chest loaded up in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it just, there's really no benefit of taking Amen Thompson, right? I mean, I can't really feel something like that. Like, just because he is probably the 4th consensus best player, you don't need to take him just because. Unless you're just that convinced, like, if the same argument goes for, what we said about Scoot, where the upside is just ridiculous next to SGA. Like, unless Oklahoma City feels they can get that exact same outcome with Amen, really out of high school, then you do it. But you got to be really convinced. Like if Oklahoma City's convinced, then they do it. But otherwise, I think if it's not, it's an all or nothing thing.
It is all or nothing. And also, Richard, what also you need to work, what you need to see is how great eBay Motors is, because eBay Motors is there for you. And they understand that just like sports, building a championship team is difficult, folks. Building a championship team is difficult because you need the perfect fit in order for it to happen. Well, guess what? At eBay Motors, you get that perfect fit every time, guaranteed, because they understand how important it is to get that right fit. So with eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part you need fits just right the first time around, and you can add it to your ride. Go to My Garage and look for the green track to be part of what you want to fit into, or your money back guaranteed. Just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game. And so you want to have that confidence whenever you shop at eBay Motors that what you get is going to fit your ride, and it will. With over $122 million, with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win with the right parts at the right prices, guaranteed, and getting the right fit. So make sure you check it out today at eBay Motors. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available in U.S. Customers, eligible items only. Exclusions apply. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. For your next listen, check out the Lockdown NBA Big Board podcast with our host, Richard Saman at Mavs Draft on Twitter, here co-hosting today's show, talking all about the NBA draft. Richard, the top 4 we just went over. Now let's say that status quo happens, at least for the Thunder, and they stay at 12. One thing that's been eye-catching a little bit is Amon's brother, Ausar Thompson. If he falls to 12, would there be consideration for you of, sure, maybe a guy like Ryan Repair fits better, or a guy like, Leonard Miller checks a box, but like you can't pass up on Ausar Thompson's upside for the Thunder, or for the Thunder specifically at that point, would you go more who fits in a more natural role?
Well, I do think Ausar, he has good fit with, his defense is day one trait. His shooting, still a big question mark. It's improved, still a question mark. I think he's got a lot of concerns. I'm lower on him than most people. But again, I've had people tell me like that, whether it's coaches, people who worked with him, say like, he's the best defender I've ever coached. And to me, that doesn't go lightly. Like, I think, given the intel has said, like, the work ethic is strong, good kids, no red flags at all in that regard. That combination, I think it's worth taking a flyer on him. I think the upside with him mostly lies on defense. So, like, you're looking at a guy, once he fills out his frame, could be a top defender in this league, all defense. And Oklahoma City obviously has had an initiative with defense over the last couple of years. We've seen that. Even in 2022, their defense, even when they were not a good team, their defense is top 10 in the league, if I'm not mistaken. So, that's always been a big focus. I think he'd be on their front, top of their wish list, but you could get a higher ceiling as a two-way guy, not like a two-way contract, but, two-way, just they play defense and they shoot and they create. I think you can get that at 12, whereas Ausar is a very specialized player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that his defense screams Thunder, but past that, you'd be taking a big upside swing, which I would argue that you're doing that anyway with like whoever you draft at 12. Whoever you draft at 12 is going to need some development and is going to need some time to be nurtured in this organization. And at least Thompson was once thought of as like a top 5 pick in this draft. And so you can kind of bank on that a little bit. But my stance on the Thompson twins, we can pull up the synergy numbers and pull up the synergy clips. But at the end of the day, these are 20-year-olds playing high school level talent. So the evaluation on them is going to be more so predicated upon what they do in NBA workouts, how they do in interviews, stuff like that we just aren't going to be able to see and may not be as privy to as we want to be come draft night. So it's interesting. And I think that if Thompson was the pick at 12, people would be celebrating because of what his reputation was just this time last year. But ultimately, it's not as though it's like you have to take him if he slides that far. But I think it'd be probably encouraged by a lot of people if he did slide that far to 12, which I don't think that he'll get to 12, but there's a chance at least. A name that's been popping up a lot recently is Leonard Miller. And I think you and I are both pretty high on Leonard Miller, especially compared to where the consensus is at for him. But at 12, how would you view that pick? If the Thunder took Leonard Miller at 12, what would be your rationale for it, and what would be your opinion about him?
Yeah, I think I like his overall upside. I mean, don't forget he's still, I believe, 19. Just played in the G League Ignite, had a massive improvement from where he was 1 year ago today to where he is now. I mean, he was really he looked great out there, and he does need to improve some things. Obviously, he's young, he's still raw, but I think he fits very well. The shooting may never come along, and you probably just live with it. Having him as a almost small ball 5. I mean, he's a 6'10" jumbo creator, like not really a creator, he's just a mismatch. Like that's really his position, is mismatch. Like centers can't take him, guards can't take him, wings kind of can. That's the closest position, but he's not a 3, he's not a 4. There's really no number for him of what he is. I would not mind the fit at 12. I do think he's going to rise. I mean, just the G League Ignite program is so strong. I think especially after seeing how good Jaden Hardy was this year. And obviously he wasn't like all rookie, didn't blow anybody away, but I think in the final 2-3 months, he actually kind of did. I think overall it wasn't, but when you look at that short span, he really improved. And he was a guy who he did not produce in the G League Ignite. I think teams will start focusing on, hey, what will they do to get better? And all these guys are very much professionals. Like these are guys who have been groomed to be they know the NBA lifestyle, and they can be that NBA professional at 19, 20 years old, and they're way ahead of the curve. So because of that, they're going to develop better. I would not mind Oklahoma City taking him. The on-court fit, it's weird, but you make it work. You make it weird in a good way.
Making it weird in a good way. Richard, if I could dictate the board for you and do it in a realistic way, but also a favorable way. So it's a tough line to walk, but let's try to walk it together here. If you could handpick a prospect at 12 for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who would it be that could realistically fall there?
Man, I think that's tough. If I had to choose somebody where it's the combination, man, there's 2 guys that really just popped to me. 3, I'll just say 3. So Cason Wallace is one. I think he fits everything, but it's, again, guards, not the ideal spot. So I'll kind of ignore that. GG Jackson, I think, would be great. He is somebody, Raphael, my co-host at NBA Big Board, Locked On NBA Big Board, we both really like him. He's going to be the youngest player in the league. He's 6'9", has guard skill, doesn't have point guard skills. He definitely has creation skills, I should say. This is a guy who averaged 3 to 1 in turnovers to assists, but his defensive upside is there. He's athletic. He's big. That's a great combination. And then the last one, I think with the recent news of his injury holding him out till the beginning of the season, Dariq Whitehead would have been one of my candidates, but I think he's going to fall towards the 20s because of that foot injury, unfortunately. If he was healthy, it's definitely him. I mean, he's somebody who he creates more than he's given credit for. He shoots the lights out, and the defensive upside is there. So those are the 3 guys I would go with. That's a tough question, though.
So looking at those guys. So firstly, with Whitehead, now the Thunder are going to play 10 to 12 guys in any given regular season game. It's just how Mark's going to operate. And so the Thunder can take on guys who get minutes right away. But they also have a rotation that if they needed to, they could get by without their first round rookie playing a ton this year if he needs to rehab or whatever the case is. So given his upside and his ability, would you feel more comfortable with him landing in a spot like the Thunder? We don't have to rush him back to NBA play. They can let him fully rehab, let him fully heal, and then try to develop him as more of a longer term picture. Or do you think that the Thunder would be better off going in a different direction?
I'd say if you're going to do that, you probably have to trade back. 12's not the spot for it. I'm trying to think of who you could move back with. I mean, maybe Brooklyn. Brooklyn's feels realistic. The Lakers, maybe. I mean, I maybe Utah. Utah actually feels like one. You can move back 5-4 spots. But again, like, it's a tough spot because he may fall all the way down to the mid-20s. And if that's the case, Brooklyn makes the most sense. 21 and 22 for 12 might just match.
Now, shifting over to Cason Wallace, that's been a popular name, and I think one that gets a lot of buzz. You mentioned his guard nature. How do you see him breaking into this rotation if he was the pick at 12?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think he's gonna play. He's gonna play on any team. He fits every team because of that defense. Like, there's always a need for a defensive guard. You always need a stop. He can shoot, and his creation. It's not advanced, but he passes, like, it's satisfactory. And that combination, I think, is going to find ways to get you on the court, no matter what is in front of you. Whether you have 2-3 guards already, like, you do that combination that nobody else does on the team. Most teams don't have a guard like him. There's probably 3 teams. Marcus Smart kind of does it. I'm blanking on who else, but Drew Holiday on the Bucks. But like, none of the teams that are actually in consideration for Cason Wallace's range have what he has to offer.
And I think that too, when you look at the Thunder, they play such a positionless style where, like, Kenrich Williams is playing the small ball 5 and the 4. Wiggins is playing the 4. Like, J-Dub's playing the 4. Like, these guys get bumped down to 4s. You have, Dort, who plays the 3. You have Josh Giddey, who can play the 2 or the 3 and even play small ball 5 and 4 at times with Mark in very limited spurts. He did that last year. SGA, of course, the point guard. So you can find ways to mix and match and get Wallace in there. It's not as though they have a logjam at guard the way that it seems like on paper, because the other guards are Isaiah Joe, who needs minutes and needs high priority minutes because of his shooting and because of what he brings you as a flamethrower. But past him, off the bench, would you be upset if Cason Wallace bumped out Trey Mann from the rotation? He was already bumped out of the rotation at the down stretch of the season. So adding Cason Wallace to do the job would be a huge upgrade. Like, and the bottom line is, as Sam Presti and Mark have said, they want internal competition, and they want the players to understand, and the players do understand, not everyone's going to survive this rebuild. Even if you were a first-round pick, there's just too many first-round picks to, like, say, okay, well, since we invested a first-round pick in you, we can't give up on you. No, if someone better comes along and beats you out for those minutes fairly, then okay, that's just how this machine operates. So I wouldn't be someone who turns your nose up at Cason Wallace just because he's a guard. And I think that's where fans get a lot of, like, well, we've got too many players with a G next to their name. If I was a Thunder fan right now, I would not be even considering what the roster column says. If they're a G, a F, or a C, it does not matter. It just does not matter because of the way that the Thunder play and execute with their roster. And so that brings us to G.G. Jackson, who I think is pretty polarizing in the NBA draft community, at least a little bit. I've seen him as high up as 4. I've seen him as low as, like, mid first round. What is it about G.G. Jackson that you love so much?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that size, creation ability, and youth combo, and athleticism too. I mean, he has one of the best hezzies I've seen in this draft. He probably has the very best. And when you're 6'9", comfortable with both hands, you have a solid move. The defensive upside is there. He won the Peach Jam Defensive Player of the Year right before reclassifying in the last summer's EYBL Peach Jam, which that is why he's the youngest player. He was playing high school basketball just not even 9 months ago. So, or not even 10 months ago, I should say. But his footwork is strong, I think, in the mid post. Like, there's just a lot of stuff there. I think the ball handling ability, the athleticism, the size, the defense, the tools are all there. He's very much a tools or not guy. And, sometimes they fail, but if it's a lot of the time because they don't go to the right team. And for him, Oklahoma City is the right team. I mean, from all accounts, on Locked On NBA Big Board, we've talked about it. G.G. Jackson has been involved with Raphael, our main host, has been seeing him in person, meeting him and things like that. And I mean, he holds himself accountable. Like, he knows what he did wrong. He admits that he was wrong to do what he did, liking comments, going on Instagram, all of that. He knows what he did wrong. He'll mature. He's pretty raw to being experienced in life, if that makes sense. I mean, his sister goes to South Carolina with him. He's never truly been independent. His parents aren't far away from him. Always kind of been a sheltered kid. Like, there's just, I think he's going to mature, and that's going to change who he is on the court too. Like, they kind of go hand in hand.
G.G. Jackson coming up. Let's do some Tankathon spins before it's too late on the Locked On NBA podcast. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Richard, we only have 5 days, 7 hours, 21 minutes, and 15 seconds to do this. Let's spin the wheel of Tankathon. It's the Chicago Bulls who leaped up to the number 1 overall pick. So, Dallas, say goodbye to your draft pick. It's over with. It's done. The Bulls are number 1. Charlotte is number 2. San Antonio stays at 3. Detroit at 4. Houston at 5. Portland at 6. Orlando at 7. Indiana, Washington, Utah, Dallas 2. New York at 11. And the Thunder stay at 12.
I demand a recount.
We're going to get another spin. We're going to get another spin coming out. But this starts the questioning. Independent of the Thunder, just like a general draft question. Is there a place where Victor could go on Tuesday where you say, I just don't think he's going to work out or fit there, or it's not the best operation for him? Or is he so good that he transcends whatever franchise he goes to?
Choice B. He transcends everything. I mean, I don't think Houston is necessarily ideal because right now they're just if you ask anybody, I think that's got connections in the league, they'll say, that's just not where you want to send your guy right now. They have so many problems where they built up, I would say, these problems over the years and not addressed it. And it's starting to kind of fire back. I think some of it can change because they did fire their coach, which was necessary, or technically, I don't think they fired him. They mutually agreed, but I think that could change stuff. But they just have a lot of cooks in the kitchen right now. And, I don't know how Wemby, I think that's probably one of his worst spots. And unfortunately, and it's not because of talent, it's just because of the play style and the culture that's there right now.
So this next spin is actually a double favor to you. Indiana gets the first overall pick, going up 6 spots. Orlando jumps up 4 spots to number 2. San Antonio at number 3. Portland at number 4. That's your top 4. OKC stays at 12. Dallas stays at 10. And Orlando gets the pick 11, 2 from Chicago. So with this being said, that's also your nightmare scenario of Chicago being number 1 because you lose both picks in that draft.
That is quite literally Chicago going up to the lottery is the worst case scenario because that pick is, in the actual lottery, the top 4 is, for context, is the Magic lose the pick if it's only top 4 protected. And since Chicago's behind Dallas loses the pick. So that's why I was upset. What was the top 3 again? I know Orlando, you did me a favor.
So Indiana 1, Orlando 2, San Antonio 3, Portland 4.
Okay, that's a good Indiana with Rick Carlisle and Wembanyama. I will say it again. Wembanyama's number 1 status isn't just because of the talent. It's because of what's up here. Like the kid gets it, motor, understanding of the game, combination is outstanding. Then you put him on the body and skill set he has. He'd be. I mean, Rick Carlisle we saw what he did with Luka early in his career. That gets shadowed, I think, by how it ended in Dallas. But Wembanyama with him would be nuts. And Halliburton.
Here is the interesting one. Utah goes up 8 and gets number 1. Washington at 2. Houston at 3. Charlotte at 4. Detroit at 5. San Antonio 6. Portland 7. Orlando down to 8. Indiana down to 9. But Utah, after we all thought that Utah was going to be in the bottom of this tank race for Victor, they end up getting Victor anyway. How does Victor fit in Utah? I've never really let my mind wander that place yet.
Yeah, that's dangerous for the league. Walker Kessler can truly play center. Wembanyama has, I don't know if he's actually said it, it's been at least heavily implied. He doesn't want to be center, right? Where he wants to be like the free roaming big man is more what he wants than rather to be a traditional rim protector. And wow, he gets to do it. Like I think that team makes the playoffs next year. Like no question. You added, I mean, Utah was a borderline play-in team until they packed it in and kind of cooled off towards the end. But 37 wins, it's not unrealistic to go up 10 wins. Like Wembanyama changes your franchise that much.
That would be, that is just one of the possibilities I have not registered yet. And seeing Utah there would be crazy. This next spin, though, is one we're going to end with because it is the best spin that you've ever gotten. San Antonio gets Victor, and so that storybook is complete. Even though we both don't like the Spurs.
I'm scared where you're going with this.
The storybook is complete. The Oklahoma City Thunder own the 2nd overall pick. The Orlando Magic own the 3rd overall pick. The Utah Jazz own the 4th overall pick. And so now you've got Detroit, Houston, Charlotte, Portland, Indiana, Washington rounding out the top 10. Dallas loses their pick. Chicago gives their pick to Orlando. Orlando now has picks 12 and 3. OKC has pick 2. with this being said, I think that this highlights what we've talked about. Scoot, generational talent. I love Scoot. I am a Scoot stan. Watched him in person, talked to him, in a private setting. Scoot's awesome. The Thunder, though, have a ton of leverage in this scenario. What would it be? Let's say that the Thunder take number 2 and they call up Detroit at 5, or they call up Charlotte at 7. What would the return be if they say, hey, I can deliver you the 2nd overall pick, and I can still, privately, the Thunder could still get Walker or Hendrick, someone who really fits with them. But what would the coup be to do that? What would be the haul? It wouldn't be just one first-round pick, I don't think.
Yeah, I think those two teams are tough. I don't think Detroit would do it. They would probably go for 3, if anything, but also 5 seems like a good spot given what they need. I think with Charlotte, you could probably get stuff because they want to be good now. They're not trying to rebuild. It's hard, though, because Scoot doesn't exactly fill everything they need. It helps a lot. He's not the area they need the most. So, like, that's tough. I think they could still get, though, in theory, say that it was picks only and not players. You're looking at this pick. Next year's a weak class, and Oklahoma City already has so many picks. I don't think they want a 2024 pick.
Correct.
I think they'd want 2025 or 26, which we're already seeing is for both of those. Like, just a little bit of context why teams even go this far back. Like, teams are researching very hard right now where the future is. The EYBL three stripe circuit for Adidas. All of these circuits are going on right now, and they're all minimum 2024 classes. 2024, 2025, and 2026 guys are playing. Every one of them has looked outstanding. So we're seeing already those 2 drafts after this next one are going to be outstanding. So I think they're going to want 2025 or 26 picks clustered somewhere.
Correct. And so if the board fell this way and Sam Presti said, Richard, my heart's not in this draft. I need you to make the call for me. Behind the scenes, would you stay put at 2 and select Scoot, or would you maneuver around?
Man,
and it all comes back to you. It's all on you.
I think you take Scoot. I mean, this is a guy who he'd be number 1 in most drafts of the last 10 years, like in more than not. So you got to take the talent. Because really, let me ask you this: if Josh Giddey and Trey Mann were not in Oklahoma City right now, would you be saying Scoot is like the best fit for Oklahoma City? Like, given everyone else stays the same, you still have Chet, like just fit, purely fit, ignore the talent. Would you say like point guard at the top is okay to take?
I'm so glad that you turned this on me, because I want to announce to the world, I know that the Thunder won 40 games. I watched every single second of every single game and covered every single game and went to every single game at home. The bottom line is, if this team is fortunate enough to get the 2nd overall pick and leap up 10 spots in the draft, and in their 3rd draft of this rebuild, this is only draft number 3 of this rebuild, get that lottery luck, you still take the very best available talent, independent of position, independent of play style. You are still not in that roster space to turn your nose up at talent. You still need to fill this roster out with top-end talent. Like, look at this roster. Trey Mann is going to be lucky if he carves out a top 7 rotational spot in the NBA from what we've seen so far, right? Isaiah Joe is a great flamethrower, but he's a 6th man that helps you score off the bench. Lindy Waters is an undrafted guy that had a G League tryout and is a fine 10-minute spurt guy, but he's not someone that you rely on. So what I'm saying here is, even though we love Lindy Waters and we love Trey Mann and we love Isaiah Joe, if you bump anyone out of this rotation for Scoot Henderson, you immediately get better. And if that's the case, you draft the guy who gets you immediately better. And that is what the whole point of this rebuild has been. That is what the whole point of what Sam Presti is building has been. And he's told you that from the beginning. Not every player who you grow an attachment to is going to make it. That's the bottom line. Trey Mann might not make it, but it's going to be because Scoot Henderson is available in this hypothetical world. So if you're lucky enough to get number 2, you are not in a position to say, I don't want the talent. I don't want the generational talent. You take Scoot Henderson. Talent usually wins. Talent usually figures itself out. And you have, luckily, drafted guys, SGA, Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren. You've drafted guys who have this mindset, Jalen Williams, who have this mindset of not only do I want to be good individually, but I want to do whatever it takes play style wise to make my team better. Jalen Williams played power forward this year. Jalen Williams played small ball 5 this year. Josh Giddey ranged from the 2 to the 1 to the 3 to the 4 to the 5 this year in different possessions. They're willing to do whatever it takes to combine this talent and make it work. So drafting Scoot Henderson just adds to that. And Scoot Henderson is a pro's pro and a generational talent who I think can play in the Thunder play style. And importantly, at every game this year, specifically in the 2 in Oklahoma City, Scoot Henderson, during his pregame warmups, was not working in isolation scoring. He was literally working on coming off of screens, catching and shooting, and playing off ball with his assistant coaches pregame in the Paycom Center. Yes. So like he wants to be able to do that. He understands he's going to have to be flexible and versatile. So drafting him is not some scary idea. It is an exhilarating idea for Oklahoma City.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, beautifully said, by the way. I actually just got done watching one of his games where he went off. I'm trying to look at which one it was. It was November 16th. They killed Oklahoma City Blue. And Scoot had 27 points on 60% shooting, 5 assists, 4 steals. It was just remarkable. And he got to he drew a couple fouls as well, had 5 rebounds. And the thing that stood out to me in all of that, he had like 7 or 6 straight makes, which was cool. But a lot of it was off ball stuff. He was coming off of screens, like you said. The give and goes he have are just incredible. It's really impressive just how willing he is to play off ball as a guard that knows he's the star of the team. Like that stuff just doesn't happen like by accident. I really think you factor in, you can run handoffs for him so easily. And guys want to play with SGA. I know we're running out of time, but dude, I feel like that fit really, really does work. The talent wins. Like he'll adjust. Both him and SGA will adjust.
They will adjust for sure. And Scoot also in that back-to-back series with OKC Blue. I was at both games, talked to him after each game. There was a game, I believe it was the second game, where he just didn't have it. Didn't have it that night until the fourth quarter when he scored 15 points. Like he's that kind of player. He has that ability to just turn it on and keep at it and keep chipping away. And what was encouraging was throughout those 2 games, you saw his ability to make himself better, make his teammates better, and his vocal leadership. And look, going to the Blue games, unless it's field trip night, there's not many people there at all. And so you can literally hear everything. So hearing Scoot position guys defensively, hearing Scoot pick guys up after they made a mistake, instead of going, oh, he dropped my pass and the pick and roll and fumbled it out of bounds, like saying it's all right, man, like get their heads up and everything and move back. Like those little things add up, especially when you're looking at such a young point guard who feels like the weight's on him to try to prove he's the second overall pick and he should be the first overall pick, but there's Victor and all this kind of nastiness that happens with the NBA draft. So it was great to see Victor in person, and he really impressed both pregame and warmups and also in the actual game itself. Richard, we are running out of time, but one final disclaimer, Richard, which I have a feeling we're not going to have this be the final one, but there's already comment sections going crazy right now about this topic, including from yesterday's video, which was not about the draft at all. Richard, no team in the face of the NBA, none of the 30 teams are trading Victor. Is that correct?
Correct.
So whoever gets Victor, no matter the package, Richard, even if I offered you 14 first-round picks and Josh Giddey, they're not trading Victor Wembanyama.
If Cade didn't get traded, we'd have the same conversation 2 years ago. The Godfather package wouldn't work then. It's not going to work now.
So thank you, Richard, for joining us on today's show. Have a ton of fun at the Combine. We'll try to make it work next week, but again, be mindful that Richard's at the NBA Draft Combine, so he might not be able to make it work on this show, but make sure you check out his show, Locked On NBA Big Board. He'll be back at least the next week, if not next week, for this show. Richard, thank you for joining us. Always love our draft chats.
Thank you.
Till tomorrow, whenever you do a profile on Grady Dick, be good and be good to one another.